Welcome back. Investors pulling the plug on Tesla today, down about 2.5% at the moment. This drop comes after 3 brokerages cut estimates for first quarter deliveries. RBC Capital hit the tape first this morning. It slashed its estimates for Tesla first quarter deliveries from 500,000 to 446,000. Works out to about a 10.7% cut. The EV maker's stock is down 28% so far this year. Let's call it 29 right now. Worst performer on the S&P, and it is competing with SiriusXM in a race to the bottom of the NASDAQ 100. His leadership, at least for some, has come into question. Some have tied that poor stock performance at Tesla to his admitted use of the prescription drug ketamine. Former CNN host Don Lemon, who was granted an interview with Musk on Lemon's upcoming X show, brought up the issue.
Yeah. Do you ever worry that this may get in the way of your government contracts and clearances, and also and Wall Street as well?
Well, from a standpoint of Wall Street, what matters is execution. You know, are you building value for investors? Tesla is worth about as much as the rest of the car industry combined, from nothing. So that's pretty good. As I mentioned, we had the best-selling car on Earth last year. So from an investor standpoint, if there is something I'm taking, I should keep taking it.
Just a note, Lemon was fired from X right after that interview. What exactly is ketamine? What's it meant to be used for? Is there now a race to create more of it on behalf of the big pharmaceuticals? Should investors be concerned, at least on the Tesla side? Joining us now is the RBC Capital Global Autos analyst who downgraded the deliveries numbers, Tom Narayan. He just cut the delivery forecast. And NYU Langone professor of medicine and Fox Business contributor, Dr. Marc Siegel. Dr. Siegel, let's begin with this baseline fact. Ketamine is legal. It is a pharmaceutical often used for everything from depression to anesthesiology, correct? What was its original use, and what has that translated and morphed into now?
It's a psychedelic, Liz. It affects the brain and the GABA receptors. It causes a dissociation, happiness. It's technically a psychedelic. It was around for 50 years, first as a horse tranquilizer. They found the use for it in anesthesia because it can put people to sleep without affecting their breathing much. That's key. But it does increase blood pressure. It does affect the heart. And it has a lot of short-term side effects. What's happened more recently is it's been used for depression, to break the deep cycle of depression because of those receptors I talk about in the brain. So very, very, very astute and well-trained psychiatrists can use it intravenously to break a cycle of depression, kind of like shock therapy. Studies have shown that that works. But as usual, the genie gets out of the bottle, and it starts being used recreationally everywhere. Over 1 million people using this at various doses without any supervision can cause nausea, vomiting. It can affect the heart. And, of course, the psychedelic impact of it. You could be driving a car. You could get into a car accident. We're seeing more and more of that. It could be combined with other medications or drugs, illicit drugs like cocaine, like speed, and you end up with an extremely risky situation. Again, nobody monitoring it.
Yeah, of course, everything in moderation and be used with a physician's supervision. But at this point, you know, Dr. Siegel, Elon Musk has somehow been attacked for using this, and others look at it and say, wait a minute. He has an admitted issue with depression. This is a legal substance. It has been prescribed for him. Should we be hanging him out to dry for this?
No, that's the other side of it. No, because of what I said. I think it is very useful for depression. And if it's prescribed and monitored by a physician, I think it's a great treatment choice. I don't know about for him. I think there's nobody more successful in the world right now than Elon Musk in many different ways, including Neuralink, which I'm extremely interested in, by the way. But no, I don't see a problem with him using it. I have a problem with the illicit use on the street that could be mixed with other drugs used for overdoses and fill emergency rooms. That's my problem, not this way of using. He shouldn't be attacked for this at all.
Tom, let's bring in the investor perspective of this. You at RBC, no doubt, I'm going to guess, have had discussions with your team about this because it's been front page in the Wall Street Journal. There have been members of the board who have hoped that he could be weaned off of this somehow. They've seen erratic behavior. But how big a deal is this as it plays into how you look at the stock?
Yeah, well, certainly it's not something actually that investors that we've spoken to have really focused on. Honestly, when people look at the stock, they try to understand the core fundamentals of the business. There's obviously the auto business. There's also other businesses, right? There's energy storage, there's autonomy, FSD. So really investors have been more focused on the fundamentals of the company as opposed to anything kind of going on personally with its CEO.
You know, he has been doing interviews talking about the drug usage in recent months, and this is what the stock has done over just the past month when he did that interview. I'm not saying there is a connection, certainly, but investors can't be happy about this. Do you think it's fair at all to say, well, maybe this is a piece of the issue?
No, the stock's movement in the past month has largely due to what we're about to have next week, which is the delivery number for Q1, which is probably going to be challenged because of a number of things happening. The Red Sea crisis impacted European production. In February, you had a pull forward of demand into Q4 because of the IRA expiry on one of the key models. You know, the Model 3 and the Model Y are kind of saturated a little bit. The new car that's going to come out in 2025, it's going to take some time. So we're in a lull between two growth periods. So we're just, unfortunately, it's just a function of near-term concerns that they're going to have to cut pricing, these sorts of issues. That's really where the investor focus is.
Mark, I want to finish with this. The psychedelic drug market is forecast to reach $6.4 billion by 2034. That would be something like a 353% increase. You've got names like Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer in the ketamine business, Mylan Pharmaceuticals. There are some other names here. Everybody's talking about obesity drugs, but could psychedelic drugs really become a much bigger offering?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And the one thing that hasn't been really looked at here, which I hinted at, is what's the dose? You know, we talked about Elon Musk. Is it the correct dose? Who's monitoring it? And most importantly of all, could you get the same impact with a drug for depression that didn't cause the psychedelic effect? I mean, if we're talking therapeutics here and medical effects, we want it to be something that has the medical effect without something that causes an out-of-body experience that can interfere with function. That's the key.
Dr. Marc Siegel, Tom Narayan of RBC, we appreciate the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz. Thank you.